my name is Maddie, and this is my Marvel comic breakdown. Welcome back. We are back at it again with episode 7 of our wild comic journey. Hope you're all doing awesome and are ready for another deep dive into the comic verse. If you're new here, hey, and welcome. We're all about exploring and understanding the vast world of comic books. No need to be a die-hard fan to hang out with us, whether you're just dipping your toes or you're neck deep into it. There's something here for everyone. In each episode, we're tackling 20 different comic narratives, digging deep into the plots, characters, and the all in between. So get comfy, grab your drink of choice, and let's get into some comic madness together. And hey, if you enjoy the ride, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. We'd love to have you as a part of our comic-verse enjoyment. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. The next 3 comics are in the Red Raven Comics #1. They were all released in May 1940. The next comic is titled Mercury in the 20th Century. It was written by Martin A. Bernstein and illustrated by Jack Kirby. Earth is in the midst of a war, and up in the heavens, Zeus suspects that Pluto is behind the turmoil. Concerned about the planet, Zeus decides that Earth needs a defender to stop the war. And who better to do that job than Mercury? Upon arriving on Earth, Mercury immediately senses the chaos and quickly locates Pluto, who is disguised as the bellicose dictator of Prusland. Mercury confronts Pluto, attempting to halt his destructive actions that are causing immense human suffering. However, his efforts are thwarted when Pluto calls his guards, forcing Mercury to retreat. Instead of backing down, Mercury decides to disrupt Prusland's military, using his unmatched speed to sabotage their operations and steal their plans. This move effectively pauses the conflict, which angers Pluto, who then sends his agent Thea Schilhausen, also known as L5, to handle Mercury. But when L5 and her minions try to shoot Mercury, they find that he is immune to bullets. Mercury confidently informs the agent that peace is on its way. As Mercury returns to Olympus, he observes that the soldiers, now unable to fight, are beginning to communicate and form alliances, effectively derailing Pluto's plans. Through retcon, this story of Mercury has been reinterpreted as the exploits of the eternal Makari, with the character of Pluto identified as the deviant Crow. This interpretation potentially makes this the earliest known appearance of the Eternals. This was one of Jack Kirby's first works, marking his earliest known art credit for Timely Comics. This story uses classic Greek mythology as a framework, depicting a struggle between divine entities affecting the earthly realm. The use of Mercury as a hero aligns with his mythological role as a messenger and intermediary. The narrative is rich in conflict and moral dilemmas, bringing a mythological scale to human warfare. The retcon identifying Mercury and Pluto as Makari and Crow from the Eternals adds a new layer of complexity and provides a connection to the larger Marvel universe. Jack Kirby's art brings to life the epic scale and dynamics of the story, showcasing early elements of his style that would become legendary in the comic book world. The next comic is titled Race to Jupiter. It was written and illustrated by Jack Kirby. The year is 2150 CE, and Comet Pierce is literally the top dog in interplanetary rocket racing. His rocket takes a tumble, crashing onto a mysterious alien world. In the aftermath of the crash, an unknown woman rescues an unconscious Pierce, nursing him back to health. She confesses her love for him, and after a passionate kiss, she and her alien companion vanish without a trace. But it doesn't end there. Pierce discovers his rocket has not only been repaired, but enhanced with a rocket engine so advanced it puts him light years ahead of Jort, allowing him to ace the race in a matter of days. But who is this mystery woman? Comet can't let it rest, so he heads back to the planet where he crashed. With some help from the locals, he locates her and is astounded to discover that she's none other than Queen Larina of Martian Zoranthus, locked in a rebellion against Golak, a traitor who seized control of her planet. Comet, never one to back down from a challenge, pledges his help in her rebellion. This is an intriguing slice of interplanetary intrigue and romance. The character development and the sudden plot twists keep us on the edge of our seats, highlighting the timeless allure of space adventure narratives. The next comic is titled Recreator of Souls. The author and artist are unknown. Let's delve into the world of Magnar the Mystic, who wakes up from a really long nap, only to find the world at war. In this moment of chaos, Magnar does what any good mystic would do. He summons the spirit of Solomon for advice, and Solomon, being the wise chap that he is, tells Magnar to use his magical powers to quell the raging conflicts and save humanity from itself. Talk about a heavy morning. So Magnar jumps into action, heading straight to France to lead a helping hand to the French army. army, who are defending their country against Nazi invaders. But things go south when Magnar gets trapped in a Nazi foxhole. Unfazed, Magnar uses his mystical abilities to summon the spirit of legendary escapist Harry Houdini, who helps him wiggle free from his binds, allowing him to escape and join up with the French forces. Once with the French, Magnar becomes their secret weapon, concocting a battle plan and summoning the spirits of none other than Napoleon and the Duke of Wellington to boost their offensive against the Nazis. But he doesn't stop there. Magnar then summons the spirit of the innovative Thomas Edison, who lends his genius to create a device that wreaks havoc on the Nazis' radios, and a tank that turns the tide of battle in the favor of the French. In the aftermath of the battle, with the Nazi forces defeated, Magnar gives the survivors a stern order: return to their country and cease all hostilities. And faced with the might of a man who can control the spirits of the greatest in history, they agree. With his mission accomplished, Magnar graciously thanks the spirits he summoned and sends them back to the afterlife. Analyzing this narrative, it is clear how the blending of mysticism and history gives the plot its unique flavor. The addition of historical figures like Solomon, Houdini, Napoleon, Wellington, and Edison brings an interesting dynamic to the story, contributing to its charm and appeal. It also serves as a reminder of the enduring impact of these individuals on our collective consciousness. The next comic is titled Origin of the Eternal Brain. The author is unknown, but it was illustrated by Robert Golden. It dives into the mind-bending tale of Dr. Carmody, his assistant Jim, and the notorious invention of the eternal brain. Dr. Carmody and Jim have just wrapped up an experiment that literally defies the laws of nature. They've created a way to remove the human brain and place it in a device that promises immortality. But just as they're basking in their breakthrough, Carmody's daughter Mary screams for help. In the ensuing chaos, Carmody is fatally shot, and Jim knocked out by a crook named Pegleg Martin, who kidnaps Mary on behalf of Ulaanbaatar, the ruthless ruler of Mongolia. When Jim comes to, he discovers Carmody in critical condition, so with no other options, he performs the operation to transplant Carmody's brain into their invention. With his new expanded mental prowess, Carmody guides Jim telepathically to Ulaanbaatar's stronghold. Despite a telepathic ultimatum to Ulan, the villain refuses to release Mary. On arrival, Jim confronts Baator's goons with an electric sword, but he's captured and thrown into the castle's dungeon. But fear not, because the Eternal Brain steps in, using his newfound powers to turn the guards into willing allies and free Jim. With their help, Jim makes his way to Mary, and in a tense showdown, obliterates Ulan with a well-timed grenade. Escaping the castle, Mary and Jim face one last challenge from Pegleg Martin, but Jim, proving his mettle, destroys Martin's aircraft, and they make a safe escape. But the triumph is bittersweet, as Mary learns the price her father paid for her rescue. Despite Carmody's insistence that it was necessary, Mary resents Jim for turning her father into the Eternal Brain. This story exposes the profound moral and emotional consequences of scientific advancement. The characters are pushed to their limits, challenging their relationships and ideals. The use of brain transplantation as a metaphor for transformation raises thought-provoking questions about identity and humanity, adding depth to this thrilling narrative. The next 6 comics are in the Human Torch #2. They were all released in September 1940. The next comic is titled Introducing Toro, the Flaming Torch Kid. It was written and illustrated by Carl Burgos. Buckle up as we dive into the origins of Toro, the flaming sidekick of the Human Torch, and an unforgettable circus showdown. The Human Torch is doing his usual superhero flyby when he spots something unusual. A young kid, body ablaze, lying on the ground near a circus. He lands to lend a hand, and to his surprise helps the boy, Toro, master his fiery abilities, even teaching him to flame on and fly at will. But their moment of bonding is rudely interrupted by Samson, the burly circus strongman, who decides to challenge the torch. Spoiler alert, Samson loses and storms off, vowing revenge. Toro then shares his heartbreaking backstory. He was in a train accident, losing both parents while trying to save them from the flames. He woke up clutching a piece of molten metal and was soon adopted by 2 kind-hearted circus performers. While Toro is sharing his story, Samson is busy plotting his revenge against the circus and the torch, armed with a stolen invention dubbed the Rayon Gun, which can extinguish flames. His plans are foiled when the police nab him and the torch hunts down his henchmen. A fun fact to note, the train from Toro's origin story is cheekily named the Marvel Special. This story deepens the lore of the Human Torch and Toro, painting a picture of how their partnership began. The narrative creates a sense of camaraderie and mentorship between 2 characters and introduces personal stakes for Toro, making him a more sympathetic and engaging character. Moreover, the whole revenge plot adds tension and suspense, culminating in a dramatic showdown that emphasizes Torch's heroism and Toro's potential. The next comic is titled Submariner Crashes New York Again. It was written and illustrated by Bill Everett. The Navy has been hit hard, losing 4 battleships due to fifth columnists at the Baltimore Naval Base. The Submariner, ever vigilant, decides it's high time to check out the situation. He stumbles upon a concealed Nazi U-boat with a bunch of suspicious-looking men diving down toward it. Seeing red flags everywhere, Namor decides to stay on deck for the upcoming christening of a new ship. As the ship makes its ceremonial plunge into the water, unexpected backup in the form of Namor's aerial subs make their grand entrance. They attach anchor discs to the ship, lift it out of the water, and place it back on a dry dock. Namor then drops a letter to the officials, warning them that the ship was about to be sunk, and assuring them that he's got the saboteurs on his radar and will personally take care of the situation. He then leads some members of the Navy to where the U-boat was, and one of the men goes underwater to double check that Namor is actually telling the truth. The man comes back up and confirms the truth, and Namor asks them if they are going to do something about it. The man in charge says that it's out of his hands, and so then Namor tells him to turn the boat around, and then they leave without him. Namor then blows up the sub, but it doesn't completely destroy it, so he grabs his arrow sub and tows the U-boat onto a nearby island. Then he flies away, leaving the submarine and its counterparts stranded. When we take a step back and analyze this, it's clear that the narrative has a strong emphasis on Namor's proactive and protective nature. He isn't just reacting to threats, he's seeking them out, staying ahead of the game, and taking decisive action to prevent sabotage. His solo mission and personal pledge to handle the saboteurs reflect his independent character and his commitment to maintaining peace. The story also uses elements of suspense and surprise, like the unexpected arrival of Namor's subs, to keep readers on the edge of their seats. The next comic is titled Extortion for a Bailout. The author is unknown, but it was illustrated by Paul Rainman. It opens with Carl Burgess, who serves double duty as both district attorney and the superhero known as the Falcon. As he's leaving court one day, Carl bumps into a woman named Miss Bankhead. She tells him that her husband has been snatched by a group of kidnappers, demanding a whopping $50,000. Realizing this situation calls for a hero, Carl takes on the alter ego, the Falcon, and it begins to hunt for the criminals. He makes a bag full of fake money and paints the bag with luminous paint. He then sets it out and waits for it to be grabbed. When it is grabbed, he follows the criminal and hangs out on the back of his car. They end up at a farmhouse hideout, and the Falcon wrecks the car. He beats up most of the crooks, but then a third kidnapper enters and stalls him. The kidnappers try to leave, but remember, the car doesn't work anymore thanks to the Falcon's amazing foresight. So he beats the kidnappers up again and frees Mr. Bankhead. The Falcon tells Mr. Bankhead to drive the tied up criminals to the police and hand them in. Turns out these kidnappers aren't just into ransoms for the sake of quick cash. They're trying to gather extortion money to spring their boss, Big Jim Peterson, from jail. Ironically, as district attorney, Carl Burgess himself was looking to prosecute this very man and finally got a guilty conviction. We can see how Carl's double identity as both DA and superhero offers a fresh twist. His professional role puts him at the center of legal drama, which naturally intertwines with his superhero escapades, creating complex and intriguing plotlines. The narrative also highlights the ironic twist of his superhero identity working to dismantle the very problem his day job has inadvertently created, offering an extra layer of depth to Carl's character. Plus, the unexpected motivations of the kidnappers add an additional element of surprise, enhancing the overall plot's intrigue. The next comic is titled A Wish Come True. It was written by Paul Quinn and illustrated by Harold DeLay. It dives into a quirky tale of Jimmy Everett, a kid who's tired of the same old, and ends up having an adventure that's anything but ordinary. So Jimmy, in his quest to cure his boredom, decides to pay a visit to Mr. Schmidt, an old chemist who's busy experimenting in his lab. The chemist has been working on this wild potion that can shrink someone down. I mean, talk about some serious Honey, I Shrunk the Kids vibes. Jimmy runs an errand for Mr. Schmidt and returns to find him snoozing. Seeing an opportunity, Jimmy decides to give the potion a whirl, and poof, he's now as tiny as a nickel that's lying around on the floor. Talk about a drastic change in perspective. When Mr. Schmidt wakes up, he spots the nickel and picks it up, not even noticing little Jimmy hitching a ride on it. He stashes the coin in his pocket, and it's only when he uses a magnifying glass that he sees tiny Jimmy. After what I'm sure was a moment of shock, he quickly gives Jimmy the antidote, and our tiny little hero is back to his regular size. This story is a fun take on the classic be careful what you wish for theme, showcasing the misadventures that occur when Jimmy, bored with his regular life, stumbles into the unexpected. The sense of humor and lightheartedness throughout this plot provides a great balance to the more intense superhero stories we often encounter, reminding us of the diversity within the world of comics. Moreover, the idea of a shrinking potion allows us to explore perspective and scale in a unique and visually exciting way, making this a standout tale in its creativity. The next comic is titled Hidden Treasure Means Death. The author is unknown, but it was illustrated by Al Gabriel. It is a story about Mantor the Magician, a magic-wielding hero who finds himself in the middle of a mystery. Mantor spots a young woman drowning, and being the hero that he is, he quickly swoops in to save her. She tells him a tale of her recently deceased father, a castle she's inherited, and a mysterious map that's said to lead to a hidden treasure. Intriguing. Deciding to assist her, Mantor heads to the castle to examine this cryptic map, which hints at a secret button and a concealed passage leading to the elusive treasure. Taking precautions, he advises the young woman to lock herself in her room while he embarks on the quest. Just when you think things are going smoothly, drama strikes. A grotesque creature attempts to attack Mantor, but our magician isn't easily shaken. He uncovers the secret passage, and in a stunning twist, he saves the young woman from a supposed ghost, but the creature from before comes behind Mantor and knocks him out. The creature gets the map from Joan and takes her with them. Mantor wakes up and heads back into the passageway to save Joan. He heads down a flight of stairs and saves her from drowning again. Mantor floats the treasure up to him while they wait for the police to arrive. The two creatures try to attack again, but the magician was ready for them this time. He ties them up and discovers that these two are none other than the butler and his brother. A classic bait and switch. This narrative is a great example of a suspenseful story that combines elements of magic and mystery. Mantor the magician's tale engages the reader by leveraging the tension and intrigue that surrounds the quest for a hidden treasure. Moreover, the surprise reveal of the true villain, Saunders the butler, adds a shocking twist that further enhances the storytelling. It's a reminder of how comics can bring together different narrative elements to create a unique and compelling story. The next comic is titled The Strange Case of the Bloodless Corpses. It was written and illustrated by Joe Simon. It is a story featuring the intriguing character Dr. Jack Castle, aka the Fiery Mask. Dr. Jack Castle gets called into Police HQ to check out a murder case that's nothing like we've seen before. The victim, completely drained of blood. It's a horrific scene that demands attention. While he's willing to help those affected, Castle leaves the mystery solving up to the police. But as the narrative unfolds, more victims keep popping up, making headlines left, right, and center. Castle can't stand back any longer. It's time for his alter ego, the Fiery Mask, to take the stage. So he gets to work, setting a trap for these bloodthirsty villains at his own lab. The villains storm in, these nightmarish figures, and they overpower Fiery Mask, leaving him injured. The next morning, his nurse finds him and uncovers his secret identity. But the story doesn't end there. The Fiery Mask is back in action, tracking down the mastermind behind these horrifying incidents. It turns out to be Dr. Simdoc, a renowned stomach specialist who had vanished a while back. Turns out he'd been toying with a mechanical stomach. The Mad Doctor admits that he has been experimenting on humans to get his machine to work. He tries to catch the Fiery Mask, but he evades the Mad Doctor and stumbles upon a trapped woman. He frees her, and Simdoc catches up and tries to fight Castle again, but the corpse-like creatures turn on the Doctor, defeating him. Leaving the evil castle, the Fiery Mask blows it up to end the crazy experimenting for good. This storyline is a captivating blend of mystery, suspense, and superhero action. It demonstrates how dramatic tension and plot twists can create an engaging narrative that keeps readers on the edge of their seats. The discovery of Fiery Mask's secret identity by his nurse adds a personal dimension to the story, reminding us that even superheroes have vulnerabilities. Overall, it is a riveting exploration of the struggles between heroism and personal safety. The next 5 comics are from the Marvel Mystery Comics number 15. They were all released in November 1940. The next comic is titled Search for the Fire Monsters. It was written and illustrated by Carl Burgos. We're back to continue where we left off in the last issue. In the spotlight this time is Coalflam, part of the Firemen gang, who's up to some no-good shenanigans. He's got these 2 fire monsters working for him, pulling off bold heists, and the kicker, he's trying to pin it all on our fiery friend, the Human Torch. After pulling off a clean getaway from a daring robbery at Cantina Bank, guess who gets the blame? Yep, you guessed it, the Human Torch. Partnering with Caliph from the Firemen, the Torch starts digging into the robbery and starts suspecting Coalflam. But when the Torch gets called in for questioning, no one is buying his fire monster story. That is, until another robbery strikes. Time for Caliph to step in again, right? Wrong. Before they can act, Coalflam takes out Caliph in cold blood. As the Torch chases down Coalflam, he hears reports of one of the flame monsters causing chaos. Putting his pursuit on pause, the Torch manages to take down the monster by smartly using the subway's 3rd rail. But wait, there's another fire monster, and Coalflam to deal with. The Torch catches up with Coalflam and his crew, and using his flame powers, takes out the other fire monster. When he finally confronts Coalflam, he gets hit with a fire-retarding powder. But don't worry, that doesn't stop our hero. He easily overcomes Coalflam and hands him over to the authorities. This story shows us the Human Torch's character. He's a relentless hero, unwilling to let his name be smeared and unafraid to confront danger. Despite facing accusations and adversity, he stays focused on the pursuit of justice, even when it means overcoming a betrayal from within his own ranks. It's a thrilling tale of loyalty, bravery, and the relentless pursuit of truth. The next comic is titled Return to New York. It was written and illustrated by Bill Everett. Carrying forward from the last issue, having successfully brought down a Nazi sea base, our hero, the Submariner, now sets his eyes on a new goal. He plans to find Lynn Harris to marry her, and Luther Robinson to persuade them to come back to Atlantis. Equipping himself with the guise of a police officer, he traces them to their New York residence. When they resist, he displays his superhuman strength and overpowers them. Compelling them to return to Atlantis with him, they manage to hitch a ride on a cruise ship until they are a safe distance from the United States. At this point, Namor summons an aerosub to transport them. Back in the Underwater Kingdom, Luther is subjected to the same procedure as Lynn underwent previously, allowing him to breathe underwater. Post-procedure, the couple makes an escape attempt, leading to a pursuit from Namor. Submariner confronts Luther, overpowering him in combat. Left with no other option, Luther and Lynn concede to their defeat, agreeing to return with Namor to his kingdom. This story showcases the sheer determination of the Submariner in pursuing his goals, even if it involves coercion and displays of power. It portrays his relentless nature and strength, while also hinting at his potential for sympathy towards Lynn and Luther. We see the lengths he will go to maintain his kingdom and his people, even as it teeters on the edge of ethical considerations. It's a tale of power, determination, and the complexities of leadership. The next comic is called Murder by Candle. It was written by Ray Gill and illustrated by Bob Oskiner. Terry Vance, accompanied by his journalist friend Deadline Dawson, ventures into the poverty-stricken neighborhoods of New York City to write an insightful piece. During their exploration, they discover the lifeless body of an impoverished writer. Upon learning that the last person to visit the writer was someone who brought him food and candles 2 days prior, Terry decides to covertly keep watch on the place. Later that night, Terry observes a man breaking into the deceased writer's apartment, searching for something. Using his pet monkey to distract and trail the intruder, Terry calls upon the local law enforcement, sparking a pursuit. Trailing the suspect back to the apartment, Terry takes him by surprise, disarming him. Holding the intruder at gunpoint, Terry unveils a grim truth. The intruder is the deceased writer's son, who had plotted to murder his father with toxic candles. His intention was to steal his father's manuscripts and sell them for a hefty sum. Once the son had written his confession, Terry contacted Deadline Dawson and the authorities. The narrative reveals a grim portrayal of poverty and desperation, with the son resorting to patricide to escape his impoverished circumstances. It also emphasizes the resourcefulness and quick thinking of Terry Vance, who employs his pet and his own courage to outwit a murderer. Moreover, the story showcases the darker side of human nature when pushed to its limits and the tragic consequences it can lead to. The next comic is titled The Seance of Rhamu Rondi. It was written by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby and illustrated by Jack Kirby. It is a wicked story that unfolds around some super sketchy intentions. Harley Stone, not the hero type by any means, has the wild idea to scare the bejesus out of his Aunt Hannah. Now, Hannah's got a fragile heart and a hefty bank account, so you can totally see where this is going. Harley goes a step further and calls up the occult boss himself, Rondi, hoping to give Aunt Hannah the ultimate scare during a seance. Linda Wayne, Hannah's sharp-eyed ward, smells of the rat in this, and despite her efforts, Aunt Hannah's stubborn as a mule and is all set to go. Fast forward to that night, and the mysterious Vision makes an appearance, promising Linda that he's got Aunt Hannah's back. But our boy Harley isn't letting Linda foil his plans that easily. He sends some goons after her, but Vision jumps in, ready to rumble. But, surprise, surprise, Vision gets overwhelmed, and Linda is taken captive. This takes us to the climax. Vision tracks down Linda to Rondi's creepy hideout, manages to free her, and goes full-on beast mode on Rondi. While Rondi's busy dealing with Vision, our friendly neighborhood cops show up and bust the whole operation, putting an end to Harley and Rondi's harebrained scheme. The story takes us on a roller coaster of greed, betrayal, and unexpected heroics. While Harley Stone tries to leverage his aunt's vulnerability for his own gain, Linda's intuition and Vision's protective nature serve as their saving grace. In the end, good triumphs over evil, reminding us that every wrongdoer will eventually face their comeuppance. The next comic is titled The Brain of Professor Donaire. The author is unknown, but it was illustrated by Paul Gustafsson. So there's this string of super weird deaths happening near the ominous sounding fiery mountain. And guess who's intrigued? None other than our boy, the Angel. Things start to get real when this hunchback dude, Carlo, lures Angel into a super sus castle nestled right inside the mountain. Now Carlo is no choir boy and tries to give Angel a real good smack from behind, but the Angel isn't having any of it and takes him down without breaking a sweat. As Angel investigates, he runs into Carlo's boss, a certain Professor Donaire. Donaire, in all his mad scientist glory, reveals that he's extracted his own brain, like some Frankenstein remix. His master plan? Snatch up fit young men and find the perfect body for his floating brain. Donaire, being the unhinged dude he is, sends his brainwashed captives after the Angel. In the midst of the chaos, Donaire chucks a vial of fuzzy chemicals at the Angel, but our hero's got the moves, and he swerves just in time. Those chemicals trigger a colossal fire. Angel books it out of there, and just as he does, that freaky castle goes up in flames, and boom. bye-bye Professor Donaire. This story is a thrilling mix of mystery, action, and classic mad scientist horror. The Angel's investigation skills, physical prowess, and quick reflexes help him navigate this dangerous labyrinth. Despite the horror of Donaire's plans, the story serves up a potent reminder that those who toy with nature and essence of life, like our brain-swapping Donaire, will inevitably face their downfall. The next comic is titled The Green Terror. The author is unknown, but it was illustrated by Steve Dahlman. It dives into some straight-up sci-fi madness in Titan City. We've got this crazy Dr. Loruf, and this dude has set loose a literal blob of terror, a green slime monster, which he creatively calls the Green Terror. Professor Philo Zog, our main man in this catastrophe, sends his metallic sidekick Electro, the robot, to try and squash this slime fest. The Green Terror seems to be avoiding the local hospital like the plague. So what's up with that? Zog directs Electro into the hospital and discovers that the gooey terror has a major dislike for radium. Luckily for us, the hospital just happened to have a brand new radium gun in stock. Now we're talking. Guess who gets their grubby little hands on the radium gun before Zog and Electro? Yep, it's our villain of the day, Dr. Loruf. Only the gun does nada to Electro. Unfazed, Loruf gets out of there, leaving Zog to pick up the radium gun and obliterate the Green Terror with it. Score 1 for the good guys. But the action isn't over yet. Zog and Electro storm Zorof's lab, determined to stop this Green Terror sequel from happening. In the ensuing showdown, Electro takes out Loruf's mutant crabs and effectively squashes the second coming of the Green Terror. In a final act of desperation, Loruf tries to take out Electro with dynamite, but the explosion just ends up leveling his own lab, and well, let's say Loruf won't be terrorizing anyone anymore. Despite the chaos, Zog's quick thinking, coupled with Electro's invulnerability and combat prowess, helped save the day. It's a good lesson in bravery, resilience, and how good always triumphs over evil, even when evil is a giant slime monster. The next comic is titled The Return to Africa. The author is unknown, but it was illustrated by Ben Thompson. Our main man, ka-zar, and his trusty companion, Zar, have found themselves in quite a predicament. They're lost at sea and get spotted by a Nazi U-boat, which appears to come to their rescue. But don't get too comfortable. There's a twist here. The Nazis on board make an attempt on Zar's life, but ka-zar steps in to protect his pal. The captain of the ship, in somewhat surprising decision, opts not to take out ka-zar. Instead, he leaves ka-zar and Zar stranded in a lifeboat to starve in the open sea. Now, that's a tough spot to be in. But luck seems to be on their side as a British destroyer swoops in to save the day, sinking the Nazi U-boat and rescuing our heroes. The British captain goes the extra mile and agrees to have one of his pilots fly ka-zar back to his homeland in the Belgian Congo. But, as you can guess, the adventure isn't over yet. Their flight home is ambushed by Italian fighter planes, but the skilled British pilot takes them down without getting hit. But then they hit some rough weather, the plane goes haywire, and they're forced to parachute out. Despite the unexpected turbulence, ka-zar manages to get them both to the ground safely, finally bringing them back home after their harrowing adventure in America. It's such a classic comic storyline, but what sets it apart is the dynamic between ka-zar and Zar, highlighting the concept of loyalty and friendship, even in the direst circumstances. One more thing to note, this comic also subtly underlines the global conflict during that time, with Nazis, British, and Italians involved. The comic indirectly reflects the World War II scenario, weaving historical elements into its narrative. The next 3 comics are from the Marvel Mystery Comics number 16. They were all released in December 1940. The next comic is titled Pinhead and His Underworld Army. It was written and illustrated by Carl Burgos. This is a high-stakes scenario with our beloved Human Torch going head-to-head with the threat of fifth columnists infiltrating New York. So we have the mayor recruiting the Torch to join a special task force known as the Suicide Squad to eliminate this subversive group. That alone screams drama and tension. Things really kick into gear when these fifth columnists start dropping warning notes from planes over the city, forcing the Human Torch into action. Though he successfully downs all the planes, the pilots unfortunately don't survive to spill any info, escalating the mystery surrounding these subversive elements. Meanwhile, we're introduced to the main antagonist of the story, Pinhead. This part of the storyline highlights a complex plot that extends beyond just chaos. Pinhead reveals a grand scheming of distracting American forces while the Japanese tunnel through the Bering Strait to invade the US via Alaska. That's a unique narrative twist that intertwines elements of war, espionage, and subterfuge, creating a sense of impending doom. The climax of this story is an epic showdown between the Human Torch and Pinhead's forces at a military storage facility. Even though Pinhead boasts superior firepower, the Human Torch and his allies manage to repel the assault. The confrontation between the Torch and Pinhead is quite graphic, with Pinhead charging at the Torch and burning himself to death. A grim illustration of the high stakes involved in this fight. But the tension doesn't end here. Pinhead's ominous last words serve as a chilling cliffhanger, hinting at a larger, more dangerous threat looming over the horizon, the Invader. It's a perfect setup for the continuation of this storyline. The next comic is titled The Nazi Invasion Tunnel. It was written and illustrated by Bill Everett. It features our very own Namor the Submariner. Now we all Namor isn't one to just sit back when things are going south. So he takes Lynn Harris and Luther Robinson to give those nasty Nazis a taste of their own medicine. Their journey leads them to a village in France completely under Nazi control. What do they do next? Well, they go undercover dressing as Nazi soldiers. A classic move. In their disguises, they uncover a big reveal. The Nazis are plotting to attack on Britain by digging a tunnel under the English Channel to launch their invasion. I appreciate how the story depicts a significant point in history, infusing elements of war, strategy, and covert operations into the narrative. Then comes the strategic genius of the Submariner. During a British air raid, he plants mines in the tunnel. So when the Nazis try to move their forces, boom, their plans quite literally blow up in their faces. However, the story takes a turn when the Submariner overhears a German officer talking about a Japanese attempt to infiltrate America through a tunnel under the Bering Strait. It's another layer of intrigue and suspense added to the story, reminding us that this war isn't confined to a single front. Now the Submariner realizes the gravity of the situation and decides to enlist the help of the Human Torch. The ending leaves us in suspense, setting up the scene for an epic team-up between two of the most iconic heroes. The 140th comic in this series is titled Slaves of Prince Omei. The author is unknown, but it was illustrated by Steve Dahlman. It's an intriguing story involving our favorite scientist, Philo Zog, and his fantastic invention, Electro. Philo Zog is ensnared by the hypnotic spell of Prince Omei. Omei's got a simple yet sinister game plan. He wants to use Zog's creation, Electro, to get all the local mobsters to bend their knees to him. But Omei doesn't play nicely. When a few mobsters try to take down Electro, they end up getting rounded up for a brutal lesson in loyalty. And then the plot thickens. Omei starts getting paranoid and begins using Electro to commit a string of crimes. This move, of course, sets the authorities hot on their trail. Omei's paranoia then escalates to the point where he becomes fearful that the government might use Zog's lab to construct another robot to counter Electro. Terrified by this possibility, he sends Electro on a mission to destroy Zog's lab. This scene adds an interesting dynamic to the story as it reflects Omei's escalating fear and sense of control. The sight of his life's work being destroyed, however, is enough to snap Zog out of Omei's hypnotic control, leading to a dramatic attempted rebellion. Zog's bravery is a turning point in the narrative, though he is quickly overpowered and set for execution. But then, in an unexpected twist, Omei's minions turn against him. This plot twist adds an element of surprise, setting the stage for Zog to call Electro back to his aid. And our loyal robot arrives just in time, shielding Zog from the onslaught of bullets. In a thrilling climax, Omei descends into madness and detonates an explosion, killing himself and the mobsters, while Zog, protected by Electro, miraculously survives. The narrative takes us on a roller coaster ride of suspense, betrayal, and loyalty. Electro's unwavering loyalty to Zog is a strong theme that threads throughout the narrative, demonstrating the deeper emotional aspects that can exist in a relationship between a creator and their creation. Alright, well that wraps up episode 7 of our comic exploration extravaganza. Wow, what a ride. From mad scientists to unlikely heroes, we really had it all today. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive as much as I did. If you have any thoughts, comments, or theories about today's stories, be sure to drop them in the comments below. I love hearing what you all have to say. And if you have a friend who's into comics or is just curious, share this video with them. The more the merrier in our comic loving community. Remember to stay tuned for the next episode where we'll unpack another 20 comic narratives. So hit that notification bell so you won't miss out. Before we say goodbye, if you liked what you saw today, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Every like, every comment, every subscription, they all help in continuing this exploration through the comicverse. Until next time, stay curious, keep reading, and remember, every page turn is a new adventure waiting to unfold. Catch you all in the next one.